Welcome to the Rockin Rich Lynch on the Radio Show. I'm your host, Rockin Rich Lynch, inviting you to join me as we discover great new music by bands and artists from around the world. With interviews, music news and reviews, great prizes, and a whole lot more. Visit us online today at soundpress.net for great music promotion and publicity. Hi, this is Rockin Rich Lynch, and you're listening to the very best of Rockin Rich Lynch on the radio. We recently moved our operations from the New York, New Jersey market to Nashville, Tennessee, and we are now looking for a production and broadcast partner in the region to take the radio show to new heights. If you're a band, musician, solo act, or represent a musical project in any genre, please visit soundpress.net and our new site, musiccitynashville.net, to learn how we can help get your message to the world. Now, please enjoy this great interview from our archives. It's a great honor and pleasure to welcome to the show today a musician, rock star, radio personality, author, and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the great Greg Kihn. Greg, welcome to the program.
Hey, Rich, it's great to be here, man.
So, Greg, I'd like to say first off that you and I are kindred spirits in a lot of ways.
Explain.
Okay, well, I've written dozens of 3- and 4-chord songs in my life. And I aspire to be a great radio personality like yourself.
Well, I'll tell you, you can't go wrong with 3 or 4 chord songs. Let's face it, the blues is only 3 chords, and most of the great rock and roll songs don't contain more than 3 or 4 chords. So you're on pretty good thick ice there. But as far as the radio goes, man, I'm telling you, it is the Wild West. Anything can happen.
Well, that's good to hear. The one difference between you and I being kindred spirits, Greg, is you've been wildly successful in both your careers as a rock star and radio personality, and my lifelong struggle continues to this day.
You have to suffer if you want to sing the blues, Rich.
Yeah, well, and you know what, Greg? It's been a little bit of minor suffering here on the East Coast the last couple of months. We were hit by a hurricane that did some damage, and then we had a crazy storm back in October. So I understand the suffering that's been going on, but we're surviving. We're moving on. We're having a great month on the radio show. We're getting to talk to you, and I want to say I was a fan of yours back in the day, Greg. I actually bought records. I had to go out to the store and buy some vinyl. I bought Rock and Roll. I bought Conspiracy. Oh, yeah. I bought Continued. Great albums. I was definitely a fan of you back in the day.
Well, I really feel like we were part of something special. We were the first independent label when we started Berserkly Records back in 1976, when we put out Berserkly Chartbusters. And, the 4 groups, the original groups, Earthquake, Jonathan Richman, the Modern Lovers, the Greg Kihn Band, and the Rubinoos, we all pooled our money and made that Chartbusters album. But, it was before Stiff. It was before Sire. It was before any of the great independent labels. And, we predated punk rock and new wave. We were the first, kids on the block to be doing that stuff.
Right. Early on, not only were you the performer then, you were wearing the executive hat. You were actually in the office working hard, getting Berserkly going, right?
Well, everybody pitched in, man. My first album, I remember shrink wrapping that album in the back of rather ripped records. They had a shrink wrap machine. And we'd get, boxes of 50 from the factory, and, me and, my bass player go in there after hours, and we'd shrink wrap a couple of thousand of them and ship them off to Ohio or someplace.
Let me back up a little bit. We're talking to the great Greg Kihn. Greg Kihn is the website. Greg is just out right now with a brand new digital-only 3-disc digital download anthology called Complete. Greg, I want to ask you a little bit more about that in just a little while. Got a bunch of questions relating to the new big box set. But yeah, just how things have changed. There you were shrink wrapping an actual product, had to worry about distribution, and here we are in 2011, 2012, and people can just go out down there and with a click of a mouse in a few minutes basically have a giant anthology of the great Greg Kihn.
Isn't that amazing? I can't believe it. But, I'll tell you the truth. In a lot of ways, I think it might be better In the old days, you go down to a record store, you browse through the bins. Word of mouth was probably the best advertising, back in the day. But isn't that kind of what happens online? You get people buzzing about this group or that group, and they start talking about it, and they build a fan base. But, the fact that, this whole thing with Complete, which is our 3-CD downloadable set, is I didn't even know we had this stuff. I mean, we started going through the vaults, and I realized, man, I got at least 2 or 3 albums worth of material here, plus a whole bunch of live stuff. And it featured like Joe Satriani, it featured Jimmy Lyon, it featured my son Rye. I mean, it was quality stuff. So we decided that we were going to do a post-Berserkly, like a compendium of all the post-Berserkly stuff. And because most people's, knowledge of the Greg Kihn Band ends at Jeopardy. Actually, Jeopardy was the beginning of a whole new era, because that's when Joe Satriani joined the band, and we signed with EMI. We started making albums for EMI. We left Berserkly, and that was kind of an upgrade all around. But, that's when a lot of people, we kind of fell off the radar there, and a lot of people lost track. So what I did was I took all of the post-Berserkly stuff and put it out on Complete. Now the kicker is this coming up year in 2012, our plan is to re-release every single Greg Kihn Band album in order, starting with the first album and working. And so probably by this time next year, you'll be able to download or purchase the entire Greg Kihn catalog, which is massive, by the way. We made like 18 or 19 albums and a bunch of bests of and a bunch of live. I mean, we must have 22 or 3 albums out. The prolific Greg Kihn catalog is out there. I know I got some on vinyl, but I did admittedly lose track a little bit there, in the 90s. Yeah, that's when most people did lose track. I remember when we first started, we made Chartbusters, and I thought, okay, this is fun. I was so intimidated, I didn't know what I was doing in the studio. I just went in there and did everything in one take. But I remember the first time I really got buzzed. We cut the first album, and that was fun, and I thought it was a pretty good debut album. I was more of a singer-songwriter in those days. Then the Greg Kihn Band started, and that was really, the second album was really the band. It was a band album. And then one of the first songs that we cut for that album was For You, which was a cover of a Springsteen song from Asbury Park. And at the time, I believe we were the first or the second people to cover a Springsteen song. I think the only other ones might have been the Pointer Sisters at that point in time.
Yeah, I think David Bowie covered Bruce early on, too.
And, that might could be. And but we were, among the first. And I remember when we went in to do, I had the flu that day, and we had to work fast, so I only did 1 or 2 takes. But I remember how jazzed I was and how good it sounded. I thought, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're driving at. And we went on to cut the rest of the album, and that album had some good stuff on it, like Madison Avenue Man and Island and stuff like that. So I kind of, I guess this was what makes my career different from anybody that starts now, is like we kind of learned on the job, man. We learned how to make records while we were making records. And I remember that I was doing that Springsteen song and going, whoa, this is what we want to do every time. Let's pattern our entire career on this. And, and I started writing songs. I learned a lot of real practical lessons in the first year or two of the band. I learned that the really great songs write themselves. All of my hits, for instance, were written in 15 minutes. Breakup Song, Jeopardy, Lucky, all that stuff got written in 15 minutes. And the songs that I labored over for months, a lot of times didn't even make the cut. And I'm thinking, well, when you write a song, you kind of got to start with the magic and then work out from there.
I never imagined in the day when I was listening that the Breakup Song was really based on a real breakup. I mean, because it's it's rock and roll. But from what I read, it was born out of real tragedy in your life.
Oh man, I remember driving. I'd been at a gig or someplace. I'd been with the boys, right? I think we're coming home from a gig. It might have been 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was raining cats and dogs. And we pulled up to my house. This is when I was living in Berkeley, and all of my stuff is on the front lawn. All of my stuff just out there in the rain. My clothes, a couple of guitars, everything. My records, everything out there, sitting on the lawn, getting rained on. And I remember pulling up in the van with the band. I remember the guys in the band going, Greg, why don't you just keep on going and we'll just check you into a motel tonight.
Wow. Got a good song out of it, though.
Yeah, I sure did, and they don't write them like that anymore. We all went over to a Japanese restaurant. We're at the sake bar, pounding sake. And, on a cold, rainy night, that goes pretty good. And I got kind of tanked, There was an old Japanese guy. He kept saying they don't write them like that anymore. I guess he was playing Q Sakamoto on the jukebox. And I thought, hey, man, he's right. They don't write them like that anymore. And it's stuck in my brain. So later on, when I picked up the guitar, the song just wrote itself.
That's perfect because, real life inspiration there's nothing quite like that. I mean, making up songs is one thing, but, drawing from everything around you to put it all together. And I got to say that, that's got to be one of the greatest rock and roll songs ever. And Greg, I want to say that, we're jumping around a little bit here. I got to go off script because you have so much going on. It's really hard to structure it and keep it in order. So we're bouncing around a little bit. We are talking to the great Greg Kihn. GregKihn.com is the website. Greg Kihn has a new 3-CD digital download anthology called Complete. I've listened to the whole thing in its entirety a couple of times now, and the music is really quality on there. I mean, besides the songs that we talked about, Jeopardy and the breakup song, everything else you had going on, a lot of some acoustic stuff, a lot of live stuff. It's all very good, and I want to talk a little bit more about that if we can.
Sure.
But we back in August we had Jeff Downs on this program of the Buggles. We were talking about the 30th anniversary of MTV. His band, the Buggles, had the first song on that video channel. How much credit would you give to MTV for helping lift you and your music into the stratosphere and public consciousness back in the 80s?
I got to give them a ton of credit. As a matter of fact, talking about Jeopardy, I think that MTV was the reason that Jeopardy was a number one record. At the time, MTV was just getting started. And I remember that historic Buggles video, by the way. And I love that song. I love those chicks that go, oh, oh. Who were they? Was that his girlfriend or something?
I don't know. Maybe it could have been, I don't know. It could have been Trevor. I don't know. I don't think.
Well, at the time, MTV was, just getting started, and they had a lot of live and fake live videos. But they didn't have any concept videos. And we were among the first to actually have a story and a concept for the video, that it wasn't just the band on stage. And I remember we had a creative meeting about the video, and they asked me, well, Greg, what are you into? And I was into horror movies. I said, I'm into Night of the Living Dead, stuff like that. So the producer, Joe Day, said, okay, I can work with that. He came up with the concept for the wedding and the Night of the Living Dead footage in there. It just worked, and it was so much fun because, we were trying to cut corners. You remember the snake that comes and jumps out and wraps itself around me?
I was having trouble. I've seen that video thousands of times. I should remember that, Greg, but that's going pretty far back for me.
Well, what we did was we ran it reverse. I had the snake was made of rubber. I let it go and went wow, 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 wow. But when we ran it in reverse, it looked like it jumped out and wrapped itself around me. So we were learning all kinds of cool little tricks using smoke bombs and, makeup to get everybody looking weird. And by the way, that church is a famous church in San Francisco called Mission Dolores. It's a heavy-duty Catholic church. Same church that's in Dirty Harry, in the movie Dirty Harry.
Yeah, Greg, I remember the church. I think, for me, a problem with videos because, I'm going to be totally honest here. I mean, MTV went on in August of 1981. I was entering my sophomore year in high school, and for the next most part of a decade, all I did was watch videos. I mean, it was too bad. It was like, you were out there living your life, being a rock star, and I was like stuck in front of the TV. I really was. But I think about this a lot of times. A lot of times I would watch the videos, I would hear the song, and it's like now I'm in my 40s. I watch some videos. It's like I never noticed that, or I never noticed how much sexuality is actually in these videos. It was just I can't explain it. I can't explain how much I actually missed. Having seen things hundreds of times. Yeah, and
the other thing is every time you hear the song. In this case, it would be Jeopardy. You always associate those visual images with the song. I remember when, like a lot of people, for some reason, get hooked on the Weird Al version of Jeopardy. I lost on Jeopardy. People say, I'll go and do that at a concert. They'll come up to me backstage and go, dude, every time you do that song, I think of Weird Al. I don't know. It was great to have somebody else do a parody of a song that was already a hit the next year, and God bless Weird Al because I still get mailbox money from him. But you always associate those visual images with the song from then on.
Right. Well, in your case, I mean, Weird Al had a lot of hits, doing parodies of other people's music. But in your case, I mean, like you said, that one was different because that was such a hit on both sides of it. You had a hit, he had a hit with it. So you did kind of have the opportunity to maybe confuse the two more than, some other song that really didn't get as much notoriety.
Yeah, that you're right about that. Plus, I got to make a cameo in the video, so that is even more confusing.
Greg, if you got a few more minutes, I do remember that. If you got a few more minutes, I'd like to continue talking about Complete. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your radio career, if that's okay.
Sure.
You're the #1 morning man on the Bay Area, KFOX, the biggest classic rock superstation west of the Mississippi, for 16 years now. How did your experience as a rock star prepare you for your career in radio?
Well, that's a good question because, when you're, at least back in my day, back in the, when I was a rock star primarily in the 80s, you did so much radio. I mean, we were on the road. We would come into a town. Immediately, I'd go out to 2 or 3, hit a couple of radio stations. And I did so many interviews as a rock musician that when I was on the other side of the mic, years later, I found myself on the other side of the mic. I was real relaxed, and I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to ask these other musicians because I knew what lame interviews sounded like, and I didn't want to be like that. The other thing I think that's fun about my job on radio is that when I talk to most of these people, because I have a lot of guests on, and when I talk to them and I interview them, it's more like a peer group. I know most of these people. I've either worked with them or, opened for them or I just know them socially. So my whole graduating class is pretty much what KFOX plays,
Right.
Eddie Money, Cheap Trick, everybody that's in that graduating class, Huey Lewis, Boz Scaggs, Santana. Of course, I have my idols that I look up to, guys like Jimmy Page and Paul McCartney, but they're kind of like a generation before, you know what I mean? For me to come up, like if I have an interview tomorrow and I'm talking to, say, Joan Jett, I've known Joni I've known her since 1974 in the Runaways. So almost everybody that I talk to, I know, and that makes it more conversational. It's less of an interview.
It gives you a comfort zone, too.
Yeah, it does, and I think that they reveal more stuff to me than they would to a regular interviewer because I'm like one of them or something.
Well, you must be good at it because you're the #1 guy out there in the Bay Area now. Because not every rock star can just step in and do it. David Lee Roth tried to do it here in New York City for Howard Stern when he went over to Sirius, and he was on and off pretty darn quickly.
It's a tough job getting up. Nobody wants to get up at 4 in the morning. every freaking day, Monday through Friday. Actually, I get up at 3:45. So because I got to drive into the city, drive across the Bay Bridge into San Francisco, so I got to give a little extra time. But, you know, man, that'll wear you down like a belt sander. And most guys start off great. Now, for instance, my good friend Eddie Money is doing a morning show in Atlanta on a radio station. They just hired him 1 month ago. And I said, Ed, you got to watch out, dude, because this is going to be a day that you don't want to get out of bed and do the show, but you still got to do it. See, radio is not a sprint. It is a marathon, and I think people need to understand that.
Now, you know, speaking of Howard, he's one of the guys that I sort of looked up to. Are there any industry icons or personalities that you looked to for inspiration when you were starting out?
Well, yeah, you know, when I first started at KFOX, I was doing 7 to midnight, and Imus was doing the morning show. I really liked Imus. However, they let him go, and then they hired me. And then the whole thing was like, would you fill in till we get a morning show? And I said, sure. And that was like 14 years ago, and I'm still filling in for whatever. But the beauty of it was almost everybody back in those days, you know, the early days of FM radio, there were so many great DJs across the country. I mean, every city had one. I'm thinking New York, Vince Scelsa, right?
Right.
NEW, of course, Howard, Philadelphia, Mike Tierson, Cleveland, Kid Leo. Every city seemed to have a great rock station and a DJ that held down the fort. So I was interviewed by all of them. So I kind of learned from the best. And the one thing that I really learned that I think has served me well is just be yourself. You know, don't have a shtick. Don't be somebody else. Just be yourself, and you can't go wrong. And, you know, I've used that rule since I started, and it's always worked for me. Good
advice, Greg. That's what I try to follow, too. Greg Kihn is the man, a rock star, musician, author, radio personality on the show with us right now. GregKihn.com is the website. Complete is the new box set. It's 3 CDs. It's a digital download. It's an anthology of basically all his post-Berserkly Records work. I've listened to it a number of times. I've really enjoyed it. Just a couple more questions about the radio. Can you tell me who some of your favorite interviews have been, and maybe one of your most challenging interviews?
Well, let's see. My favorite, some of my best one. I had a great one with Jimmy Page. I got to ask I had a lifetime's worth of questions for Jimmy, and he was very patient, and he answered all my questions, and I really learned a lot. And I was very thrilled to interview Paul McCartney, obviously because I was really influenced by the Beatles. The one guy that I really would love to interview that I never got to interview would be Keith Richards, you know, with a new book out. I just read the book. It was great. I wish I could interview him. Trying to think of some real, and, you know, of course, all of my friends, people that I kind of came up with, you might say my graduating class, would be guys like Eddie Money and Joan Jett, people like that. And I love interviewing my friends, and that's always just easy, and it's just a pleasure. The toughest interview I ever did was Dave Mason. Remember Dave Mason from Traffic?
I do. We saw the Dave Mason Band. Not only am I a radio host, we cover and review a lot of events in the New York City area, Greg, and we saw Dave Mason back in January of 2011.
And I love Dave, and I've seen him play. He's a brilliant musician, but not a very good interviewer. Or maybe he was just in a bad mood. I'm talking to him, and every answer I'm going, you know, like I knew all this stuff about him. And I said, you know, it came, Jimmy Page told me that you were the guy that played the acoustic 12-string on Hendrix All Along the Watchtower. And I just want to ask you what the session was like, because I know Jimmy didn't like to rehearse, you know, and I thought he would talk a little bit about that session. And all he would say was, it was quite nice. And I go, okay, well, you know, those early days with Traffic, you know, interfacing with Steve Winwood, you know, because he's a guitarist and you're a guitarist, and was there problems? Because no, it was quite nice. Everything I said, he said, oh, it was quite nice.
That makes it tough.
I didn't get doodly squat out of him.
That makes it hard, because then you got to, you're expecting an answer, you're expecting something that you can bounce off of, and that makes it tough. I would have to say my toughest for, I won't go any further, would have been Leslie West and Meatloaf.
Okay, I know Meatloaf can be a little prickly. Is that a good word, prickly?
Well, no, Meatloaf was okay. I just really couldn't, it wasn't really a conversation. It was more like Meatloaf talking the whole time, which is different than your
monologue.
Yeah, it's different than your problem with Dave Mason. So for me, it wasn't such a bad problem. It was just really kind of funny. It was me trying to get a word in the whole time. But Greg,
I hear what you're saying, man. That's always a problem.
You've been very good, Greg.
Well, thank you.
GregKihn.com is the website. Complete is the brand new project out there right now. It's a digital download. You can get it from going over to GregKihn.com. I'm having a good time talking to you right now, Greg. It's like I said, I was a fan back in the day. I love Jeopardy. I love the breakup song. I'm called Rockin' Rich Lynch because I do play a little bit. I cover that song.
Beautiful. That song's been covered by a lot of people. For instance, there's a movie called The Groomsman. John Leguizamo has a band, and they're getting back together again to play this guy's wedding at a band in high school. And the song they play is the breakup song. So if you see that movie, you get to see the band, and it's it's like 3 or 4 really famous actors, and they're playing my song in a garage, just like me 20 years ago.
That's awesome. Garage band music.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, and there's been, we've had cover versions over the years. The nice thing about a good song, it's just timeless. I never get tired of the breakup song. It just always does it. To me, it's like listening to a Buddy Holly song, like That'll Be the Day. That'll Be the Day never gets old. It never gets tired. And it's the same thing with the breakup song. I'm not comparing myself to Buddy Holly. I'm just saying, when I get up on stage, to this guy probably played that song 20,000 times in my life, and I still dig it.
And like Buddy Holly, that song is most likely going to outlive you.
I certainly hope so.
So, Greg, you made a very important decision in your life to bail out of the small state of Maryland and head west. How important has the Berkeley and Bay Area music scene, been to you over the years?
Oh, it's been everything, and I never could have made it out of Baltimore, and the only other choice was to go to New York, and it's a pretty competitive place. And the nice thing about the Bay Area when I got here is everybody was friends. In New York and L.A., you have a lot of competitive, and there's a lot of cutthroat. Every band is trying to put it over on the next band. When I got here to Berkeley, I couldn't believe the spirit of camaraderie. Everybody was pulling for everybody. This guy would lend you his amp on a Friday night if he wasn't using it. And that guy, I'll give you a ride to the gig. And everybody was friends, And I remember making friends with Bill Graham in the early days, And we opened a lot of shows. He threw me a bone every now and then because he knew I was poor and I needed the money. So if somebody would be coming through town and the opener would cancel, he would call me up. He was like, "Hey, Greg, can you be over here by 7 o'clock ready to go?" "Yes, sir, Big Bill. Yes, sir." So I got a lot of gigs just filling in for people. And, I feel like, and maybe this is what we're all trying to say here today, Richard, this could be it. What I'm trying to say is, you got to be thankful for what you got. You know what I mean? Really, you just, everybody has the same 3 chords, but it's what you do with them. And, I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to do all these great things. I'm thankful that I was even in that position. And, there's a lot of karma involved in rock and roll. What goes around comes around. And, you do a good job. You go out, you keep your nose clean. You play good. You never play a bad show. You're nice to people. You show up on time. You don't go over. You do your sound check. Everybody likes you. 20 years later, you're in good shape.
Yeah, it sounds like some of that love and peace and that that hippie vibe was very good for you and good to you when you needed it to be.
Yeah, I guess you'd say I was a lucky guy to land in Berkeley. Everybody here was ready to lend me their shirt.
Well, Complete is the box set. It's the digital anthology. I really like it a lot. On that disc one, I got to say, Love and Rock and Roll, Greg, is worth the price of admission alone. That's a great, fabulous tune.
I remember writing that in my garage, and I had a little pair of bongos, and I had to do all that percussion stuff on this little pair of bongos when I made the demo. And then I played it for Larry. He said, "Get out of the way. Let me show you how it's done on the tom-toms." I love that song. To this day, it still feels good to play.
Now, I just wanted to mention a couple of themes that I found on the box set. We talked about some of them already. Joe Satriani, as a young guitar player, was in your band. He's all over this anthology.
Yeah, and let's not forget my son, Rye, who was an early student of Joe Satriani, actually. I believe Joe was Rye's first teacher, and of course Rye went on to graduate from Cal Arts and Berklee School of Music in Boston. So that kid can really play. He's a jazz guitar major. He replaced Jimmy Lyon after Joe left the band, and then Jimmy took over for Joe. And then when Jimmy left, Rye was old enough to start playing. And I tell you, it's pretty special when you look over there and there's your kid playing guitar.
Right, nice work. I mean, especially on the live version of the breakup song, I really dug that outro that he was doing on there.
Oh yeah, he does a nice shred on that one.
Let's see. There's lots of Blue-Eyed Soul from you on the album, which there's a lot of good numbers like R&B influenced that you might not expect from the Greg Kihn Band.
Yeah, at the time I was a big Hall & Oates fan, and I really liked stuff like She's Gone and that Abandoned Lunch Net, a lot of the early stuff that they had done. And I did see, the Stones were doing Some Girls at that point. And I did really feel that there was definitely an R&B flavor to what we were doing. You know what the cool part is? You get to hear a guy like Satriani doing R&B backup riffs. You never hear that on a Joe Satriani record, but that guy was a tasty guitar player.
Yeah, not really. Most of Joe's stuff is like from outer space.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see, another theme. We are a New Jersey-based website. Back in 1999, we were influenced by a Bruce Springsteen concert to get this website up and off the ground. And you got 3 Bruce Springsteen covers on there, and he specifically gave you Rendezvous in the 70s.
Yep. Well, that was, I had done For You on the second album, and he really liked it. And he started doing my version, my arrangement of For You live with the E Street Band there for a while. And he was saying, calling my name from the stage and saying that he was going to do the Greg Kihn version. It was pretty cool. And he showed up at it. We played the Roxy. This is late 70s. Played the Roxy in L.A., and he showed up. He showed up alone in a rented car. Now, here's a guy who's been on the cover of Time and Newsweek, okay? He shows up alone at the Roxy. No bodyguard, no roadies, no manager, nothing. Just him. He rented a Corvette. He drove in from the airport by himself. He goes into the Roxy, pays to get in, sits down at a table with 2 total strangers that blew their mind. He said, "Hey, can I sit here, man?" And then he came backstage, and we hung out the whole night, and we were drinking Heineken and chewing the fat and playing old rock songs. Turns out, I go back to the hotel. I was staying at the Sunset Marquis. Damn if he wasn't staying at the Sunset Marquis. So we just kind of carried that party over. He gave me Rendezvous because he liked what we had done with For You.
Yeah.
And, here's a funny story. He said he was either going to give it to me or the Knack. But he said, "Greg, I think you're going to last longer, man."
And he was right. Well, that's the thing about Bruce here in the Asbury Park region. Now, he'll always just show up on the beach. He'll drive to the Stone Pony, like you said, in his vehicle, and be very accessible. And he's so loved in the region for all of that and all the work that he's done, especially helping out in the resurrection of Asbury Park, New Jersey. So
Well, absolutely. You know, that's one of my ancestral homes. We played the Jersey Shore. We were coming up in the 70s, and we played the Stone Pony and all those places. And, you know, it was really magical to get to know Bruce at the time. But now it wasn't just Bruce. It was Southside Johnny. It was John Eddie. In fact, you know, there is a bootleg called Live at the Playpen, which is a jam with me, John Eddie, Bruce Springsteen, Elliot Murphy, and Marshall Crenshaw. And it's a hell of a jam. You got to find this boot. And we did like, you know, we're doing songs everybody knows, like Gloria. You know, everybody knows Gloria. I mean, we did about a half-hour set, and nobody knew anything. We, you know, it was completely off the cuff.
Greg, I'm gonna look for that bootleg. Now, we've kept you long enough, Greg. I got just a couple more questions. I got pages, so maybe down the road we can pick this back up again because it's a great hang.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really enjoying myself. But I wanted to tell you, like, I live in a strange town. I live here in Ringwood, New Jersey. We're about 40 minutes north of New York City. The library in my town has a great musical series, but there's a guy in my town, the next lake over, who's had house concerts for 10 years.
Wow.
He's had Graham Parker in his house about 15 times.
I love Graham Parker.
He's had Elliot Murphy in his house. He's had Marshall Crenshaw in his house. The list goes on and on. If you ever get to Jersey, Greg, I'm sure this guy would love to have you and a four-piece just literally rock the house.
I would love that. You know, you're talking about all my buddies there.
It's pretty famous. It's pretty unique. It's about 5 miles from me. I love this town for that reason. Greg Kihn is on the phone with us today. GregKihn.com is the website. Complete is the 3-disc anthology that's available now as a digital download. I just wanted to say that I've been on your website. I've been looking at your blog. I could spend days on there, Greg. It's so funny. I know you're a writer too. We'd love to talk to you more about that. You had a great funny story about Mick Jagger and cigarettes that was just hilarious.
Oh yeah, that was well, you know, one of the highlights of the band was when we opened for the Stones. A couple of shows for the Stones. We were playing the Seattle Kingdom, which has since been torn down, but God, it was huge. 80,000 people a show, 2 shows in a row, both of them sold out. And after the show, I go looking for Bill Graham to just say thanks. You know, my mom always said, thank Bill Graham at the end of every gig. So I just went, and I see him, and I go, hey, Bill, I just wanted to say thanks. He goes, come with me. And he takes me backstage through all these levels of security to the inner sanctum. And there I am in the Stones dressing room. It was unbelievable. I'm sitting on a couch between Jerry Hall and Mick Jagger. And I'm hanging out with Keith, and I'm hanging out with Charlie, and I had a great conversation about Charlie playing big venues. He says, oh, you've got to play them like they're a small club. I said, hey, Charlie, I play everything like it's a small club. We're a club band. Anyway, I'm sitting there. Everybody's smoking, by the way, the entire Stones entourage, smoking like chimneys. And Jagger's puffing away, and I turned to Mick, and I said, hey, Mick, can I bum a ciggy off of you? And he goes, here, man, take the whole pack. And he gives me a pack of Marlboros, box, you know, hard box of Marlboros. And I remember thinking, wow. It turns out every guy in the Stones gets a carton of cigarettes on the rider at every gig. So he was just giving me one of his packs and just opened another one. But I went back to my dressing room, and I said to the guys, they hated me because I got to meet the Stones and they didn't. And I go, well, I do have Mick Jagger cigarettes right here. And they all whipped those. They tore into those cigarettes, smoked them like joints. You know, just sucking them in, holding. It's like, God, I think they got high. And so I give there was half a pack left. I gave it to Gary Phillips, my guitar player at the time. He was a big Keith Richards fan. And we had to go on the road with Journey. And 6 months later, we get back off the road. We come home. He says, where's the cigarettes? Where's Jagger's sacred cigarettes? He had a little shrine on his mantle with a set list from the Stones, a guitar pick from Keith, and Jagger's cigarettes. And the guy goes, oh, you mean that pack of Marlboros? I smoked them. Like, Gary just totally flipped out. He said, how did you smoke those? They were the sacred cigarettes of Mick Jagger.
Oh, no.
So he went through the garbage looking for the butts.
Oh, no. That was my brand, Greg, back in the day. Fabulous.
Back in the day. Oh, yeah.
Fabulous story. Fabulous story from the great Greg Kihn. GregKihn.com is the website, and many more are over there. If you go to the blog, there's pages of entries like that, and I'm going to get over there again myself. And, Greg, like I said, I got pages here that we could still talk some more, but we've got over 40 minutes, so I want to let you go and get – I know you got to get to sleep for the radio show.
Thank you.
At some point. Great talking to you, okay?
Rich, it's been a pleasure. And I'm going to tell all my rock star buddies that Rockin' Rich is the man to talk to in Jersey.
Oh, please do. Please do. I know there's many on the list that you've talked to that I love. I'd love to get a hold of Sammy Hagar. I loved his book, Red.
I just saw Sammy 2 weeks ago at a charity gig. Him and Joe Satriani showed up and jammed with the Doobie Brothers. And I was standing on the side of the stage, and I couldn't, I wondered why my son Rye was playing his balls off. He's just playing his ass off. And I'm looking over and I go, why is this guy shredding? And I looked over and I go, oh, because Satriani was standing there watching him.
Wow.
He was trying to impress his old teacher.
Wow. Hey, two things. We saw the Doobie Brothers in New Jersey at the end of their World Gone Crazy tour, and they're still fantastic.
Oh, they are so good. And,
Greg, you got to tell Sammy Hagar to please run for president. My God, he might be the only one who can save us.
You know what? He's too busy. He just started a new company, a rum company in Hawaii. Sold his tequila company for, I think, $60 million, and now he's starting a rum company made out of Hawaiian sugarcane. Yeah, but you put Sammy Hagar's real-world experience up against Barack Obama's, working days. It's no contest. Nah, he's the hardest-working man in town. All right, man. Love you, Greg Kihn. Thanks for talking to us so much, and we'll see you on the other side, okay? Rockin' Rich, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening to the Rockin' Rich Lynch on the Radio Show, part of the SoundPress.net radio network. Remember, if you're a band or artist looking for promotion, or if you'd like to sponsor this show or add this program to your station, please get in touch with us today at SoundPress.net.